Hey everybody, Jane here, and today I want to talk to you about Nestlings. It is a horror book, and on the cover it says Horror Book of the Year. Let's see what I think about it.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soul spoken.
All right, so at the start of this book, we have Reed and Anna. I may be saying her name wrong because at the end of the book, she tells somebody not to call her Anna, and it's spelled A-N-A, and I'm not sure if that's Anna or how to pronounce it correctly. But anyway, Anna is was a ballerina, I believe, or a dancer, and she and Reed are Jewish. I know he's Jewish. I think she's Jewish too. Now they're not like actively practicing, but they at least grew up, at least Reed for sure grew up um, religiously Jewish. Anyway, they have been married a little while. They had some infertility issues. They did fertility treatments. They got pregnant, and unfortunately, during the birth, Anna had some complications, and she is now paralyzed from the waist down and is a wheelchair user. This book takes place several months after their baby's been born, and they have gotten their names come up in a lottery of like cheap housing for families. They live in New York, and they've come up as being able to move into this really nice, way above what they could really afford, apartment in this big skyscraper type building. There are some concerns. For instance, it is not nearly as handicapped accessible as Anna would hope. She especially has concerns because while there is an elevator, there isn't a way that is very easy for her to get down, and they're pretty high up. I don't remember what floor they're on, but it's pretty high. But there's not a good way for her to get down. If there was a fire, for instance, and you can't use the elevator. So she has some reservations about this place and safety, and just kind of a bad feeling. It's an old Gothic building. Reed is fascinated by it. He just wants to learn everything. He goes out and gets a book about the building and starts reading about it. It's got kind of some dark history. There was a thing called the plummet, I think it was, where there were a lot of people who fell/jumped off the building, and he's just fascinated. But he also is having trouble finding information about this building because outside of like one like very little known book, he's not finding a lot of like newspaper entries about the different stuff in the book. And of course, it always the like when he asks about it, people are like, well, a lot of stuff was going on in the world at the time, and a few people falling or jumping off of a building in New York during the stock market crash just wasn't really noticeable. So they get to this house, they move in, and their baby starts acting really strange and getting really fussy. And then one day there's some bite marks on her leg, and they think, oh, maybe we have bed bugs. Because they've had bed bugs before. Bed bugs is no joke. I work in healthcare, and I have at one time years ago brought bed bugs home. It was a hot mess, the worst thing ever. So we're much more careful now, but in healthcare it happens. But yeah, so at first, like Reed and Anna think they have bed bugs, and they're not really sure, but then the marks go away, they don't have more, so they think, okay, was it just like a one-time thing? Was it maybe she was out playing in the yard and this happened? Their baby is not yet a year old in this. I don't remember exactly how old she is. She turns a year at one point in the book. But she is not a year old at the start of the book. All right, so I am going to tell you my thoughts in a very general way, and then I'm going to hop into a spoiler section because I think some of the things I want to talk about are going to be spoilery. I really liked the characters. I thought they were very well developed. There was a lot of emotional depth to them. The mom particularly, I liked the exploration that we were going of her complex feelings about her child and motherhood and what it means to be a mother and what it means to do the best thing for your child. And also what it means to feel resentful for the changes that have happened in your body after having a baby. I don't know how the disability representation is, but it seemed awesome to me. I love the conversations that were had about things like, the stairs. Like, if there's a fire, how am I going to get out? We're on a high floor, and yes, on a normal day, I can use the elevator. What happens when there's no elevator? How do I get out? And I know, like, in healthcare, we have a contingency for that. We have these, like, sledges or sleds that we can put people on who are not able to ambulate and bring them down. But like, we've had times at the medical office I previously worked at where people who were in wheelchairs couldn't get up to the doctor's offices because the elevator was broke. And it was very limiting. And like, thankfully, everybody was down when the elevators broke. We didn't ever, as far as I know, have to go like rescue anybody who was stuck up there. But it's a valid question. They also have a terrible landlord who was very upset that they'd modified their apartment to make it accessible to her. And there was really good conversations in this book about a lot of things, including ableism, accessibility, things like that. So I really appreciated those things. I had some issues with the pacing. This book started strong. I was interested. I was fascinated. This book had some really good moments, some really icky moments. And then it had times where I just wasn't feeling like picking it up, where I was like, are we doing anything? Are we going to find out anything? Are there going to be any reveals? I felt like it was very slow to find out what was going on. And I didn't necessarily always feel like the tension was where it needed to be for me to care about that. We're having little tiny hints of things going bad and things that are weird, but it wasn't dramatic enough for me to really care. And at several times in this book, I just was like, I don't know if I'm going to keep picking it up. My friend had read it and enjoyed it, so I did want to finish it. It was on my 5-star predictions, so I did want to finish it. And I kind of felt like the middle of it, I just didn't care, wasn't invested, wanted things to move a little quicker, be a little bigger, be a little more, just something to really engage me. I wanted this to be a page turner, and it wasn't. I had very mixed feelings at the end. Overall, I liked the end. I thought the explanation of what was going on was okay. I I think the author tried to simplify it too much. And the upside to that was there was a whole discussion about why things would work differently in this situation. I'm trying not to give spoilers here. I guess I'll talk about that part in the spoiler section, but I had some thoughts about how things turned out. I thought there was interesting discussions at the end once we got reveals. I thought they were kind of weird, and I'm not sure that we used the right words for things to really make me understand what they were, or what was happening. And then the other thing I would say is I had kind of mixed feelings about the very, very end. I think I liked it, but it also gave me a lot of complicated feelings. So let's go ahead and jump into some spoilers so that I can kind of explain a little bit more about my thoughts. All right, so it turns out that Anna and Reed have moved into this building that is owned by, they call them vampires, but they're not really vampires. They're more like bugs, kind of. It, it's confusing what they are and how um, what they are. So these people who live there, they do have some traits of a vampire. They feed off of people, but they don't feed off of blood. They, like, as best as I can tell, they inject people with a substance that turns them to goo, and then they suck their goo. Um, they do have long lives, but then ultimately they age and become the golems that watch over this building. And I just found that they called them vampires confusing. I know we needed like a place, especially Anna's the one that calls them vampires initially. She calls Reed and she's like, they're vampires, but they're not really vampires. And I think that was confusing to me because they're called vampires multiple times, but then it's like, well, they're not really vampires or this other thing. But like, I needed more. I needed to know what these things were and more about these monsters, I think. So, Reed at one point is working for a lady downstairs, doing some like secretarial work for her. And she is like one of the leaders of these vampires. And they want to change his child because they can't have children the traditional way. And they take human babies. They what they're doing with this lottery is they're getting babies into this building. And then they are turning these babies into little mini vampire things, which doesn't truly make a lot of sense. Like in their world, it's explained, well, they turn the best when they're about a year old, but like then you have all these babies who are just going around and turning people to go and eating them. It just seems like a bad thing. Also, you have this hive queen who's in the base of the building. So like these things act more like bugs than vampires, but it was almost like they were trying to put those myths together. There is a really cool discussion from Reed about, he's getting crosses and stuff, and these people are like, we are older than Christianity. And so then he's trying to go through like Judaism and be like, okay, what kind of mystical stuff can I use from Judaism? Because, that's been around a lot longer than Christianity, and maybe that'll take out these vampires. So that was some interesting discussion. I loved all the discussion about, Reed and his background in Judaism, and I thought that was such an interesting thing to bring to the book and discussions to have. It was just I didn't understand, I guess, enough about the actual monsters and was trying to picture in my head as they're explaining, like, they're vampires, but they're not really vampires. And they seem more like bugs. And they were gross, but like in a good way. So I did like that. But I also wish it had been explained better and wish we'd had a little more time, maybe, because all the reveals about that happened. The end was really fast. Like once we got some answers, everything fell into place really fast. And it was like boom, boom, boom. But I just felt like I wanted more sooner. We knew something funky was going on sooner, but we didn't really know. And I felt like I could have used more explanation. In the end, initially, Anna and Reed figures out that their child is going to be happier with the vampires because she's already basically turned. And so he's like, we're going to give the baby to the vampires and we're going to work for these people. And the wife is like, no, we aren't. We aren't doing that. But then she ultimately does decide. She kills Reed. to try to like save her baby. And then she's like, yeah, you're right. My baby's happier as a vampire. And so she takes out the hive queen and her daughter becomes a hive queen in another building, question mark maybe. But it was interesting to have that discussion of this is what's best for my child and so I'm going to do it. But also like I feel like Anna's going to have such big feelings about this. Like you have this child and like maybe she's even feeling relieved because she had a lot of resentment towards this baby because of what happened, and I don't think she wanted the baby quite as much as Reed did. But also like there were times that she was being a big old mama bear for this baby despite her feelings. I think I really would have liked the mama bear to win. And in a way it did, because in a way she was like, real moms do what's best for their kids. And they've already made you a vampire, and I don't know how to take care of a vampire baby. So here you go. But it was a weird ending, and I'm not sure I liked it. And I'm not like, I loved when she was fighting for her daughter despite the fact that we know she has these complex feelings about motherhood, despite the fact that we know that she has complex feelings about her baby. She almost killed her baby at one point because she just had postpartum depression, was dealing with everything, and she had like thoughts about hurting her child. And we know all this. And to see her fighting for her baby, like, I love that. I just had kind of really mixed feelings on the at the end being like, oh, well, they've turned you into a vampire. I guess you say, like, could we research maybe? Is there a way to reverse this? Does somebody somewhere know the magical? Is there no way? Like, I feel like we could have dragged this out a lot more and been like, but in a good way, in a productive way, and been like, oh, trying to figure out, is there any way to change this child back? Is there anything we can do? Like, you know, how do I raise this child? Is there anything we can do? And it was just like, oh, no, you're a bug now. You're a vampire bug now. Here, I'll make you a hive queen. I'm gonna go off and live my life, and your dad's dead. It was just a strange ending, and I didn't dislike it. I didn't have maybe the emotional fulfillment that I wanted from the end of this book. Like, I liked it. It was a 4-star read for me, but I think I just had some really complex feelings about this book. I, and not all of them were good. So that was my thought on Nestlings. I will tell you, I think I would have enjoyed this more as an audiobook. I did read it in paper form. And one thing I've learned about myself is certain types of books and mysteries, horrors particularly, but like horrors, thrillers, mysteries especially, are not always ideal for me to eye read. And I think this book in particular, I might have enjoyed more if I had listened to an audiobook instead of trying to eye read it. Because I think that made the pacing, where there were a little bit of pacing issues, even more pronounced. Um, Sometimes I find books slow if I'm eye reading them, but I don't necessarily notice that as an ear read. So I would say if you're somebody who struggles with slow books, maybe try this on audio if you're interested. I It was fine. It was good. It was better than a lot of other books. There was a plot, there was characters, which is something that I don't always get in horror. But at the same time, there were so many good things and so many good conversations. But at the end of the day, this isn't a new favorite, and I kind of walked away wanting a little bit more from this book. So have you read Nestlings? And if so, tell me about your experience with it. Did you feel similar to me? Did you feel completely different? Um, Tell me also if there are other horror books that deal with motherhood. I haven't read Rosemary's Baby yet. I know that's one I need to, but motherhood in horror is something that fascinates me. Pet Sematary by Stephen King, because of the parent vibe, and the horror elements among dealing with parenthood, it just like that works for me. So I love that was like what sold me to pick this book up. This woman who had a baby is now paralyzed and, you know, is trying to navigate motherhood as a wheelchair user with a new baby and having some big feelings about it. Like I loved that aspect. So if you can recommend other horror books that I might appreciate, please leave those in the comments below. And if you have nothing else to say, but you would like to leave something for the algorithm, please leave a little bird for nestlings, even though they're more bugs than birds. Bugs, birds, whatever. Leave a little emoji of a bug or a bird. A bird or a bug. Either one. And this is Jane. I'll see you next time. Bye.